The field trips were great. As children, teenagers, we would walk through the town and go down the road to the park, to the stream, and we would do field tests and check out the pH levels in the water. And I've done therapy, trust me, and one of the things that I was doing it during was not a lockdown. Can you imagine what a kid wearing a mask going into a therapy session would have the ambiguity of realizing that they're the problem while wearing a mask? I just saw the kids. They were going on a field trip. They were walking down the curb. They were all wearing masks. Outdoors. Walking through town. So to have a more precise faction, I'm sick of these beer cans. Look at these flies on the beer cans with flies. There was liquid that came out of it. One of the fine details that I never want to be a victim to misrepresentation. So when I kicked that beer can, alcohol came out of it. That there was a law saying that you cannot have an open container. The fact that when I kicked it would have been enough evidence to pursue that legality. How many chances are given? You can't get a second one, but you don't know that the first was already half of the problem. How many things you can prevent before they even occur is an exception to understanding. I was called a girl once. It's like the game when you say pick a straw and you make all the straws at the same length, you hold them in your hand, and then draw straws. This game is compared to Bloody Knuckles, where you would just hit each other's knuckles and you would take turns, and whoever cracked the skin first lost. Or no, who's never skin cracked first lost. Games like these are not being played anymore because the children are to stay 6 feet from each other and not even shake hands. Another one was the Indian rug burn, where a kid would grab your arm and squeeze with two hands and push one hand back and the other forward. And if they really wanted to get into it, they'd crank it like a pepper grinder back and forth, and that would be an Indian rug burn. It wasn't a game, it was just kind of one of those greeting. I guess it would be a greeting. A different one was a wet willy. It wasn't that popular. One kid did it to me one time and I got so grossed out because I am germophobic. I made like a big scene like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. Because this one kid really was disgusting. I could tell the kids who have bad hygiene, and this guy, I did not appreciate him giving me a wet willy. Got him in some pretty big trouble. Another one was a swirly. I never saw it happen. The wet willy, I think, only happened to me. I never saw anyone else do it. But the kids nowadays, the swirlies, the getting thrown in trash cans, I never saw those two things happen. But if you do that in nowadays, the scaling of being in a lockdown, and if you do that, I can only imagine the punishment from the teacher would be existential in comparison to whatever I grew up in. Teasing. Just as I was leaving my high school, I noticed that there were some kids who didn't leave and that they were teased. I then learned that they made bad decisions based upon because they were not part of the action. As goes the saying, the joke, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. All the wet willies, despite the Indian burns, bloody knuckles. Games I would actually enjoy rather than if they weren't even made. I understood that kids who had those games played to them probably more than they should have. Did I ever ensue those games on any? I gave maybe 1 or 2 Indian rug burns, only to the friends that I knew. And I think I asked them to do an Indian rug burn to me. I think that's the reason why I did it to them, was because I actually wanted one. In any event, the issue of masking and children is one of detriment and of great despair, where kids are said that they are more infectious, and when you're telling them to cover their face every day, then they cannot play these games. And all of a sudden they think that they are part of the game being played, especially when it comes to math. Along with games, word games, where I felt the tactic was part of the game as suppression. One of my only friends had called me stupid because the two things that I also don't forget was within his logic, him telling me 2 specific Number 1, the word specific instead of me using the word Pacific. Number 2, within stocks, we're actually looking on computers and looking at charts of stocks. We also had the smart board where you write on it, an electric board with a pen. So, we're pretty relevant. And on that smart board, I put on a AC/DC DVD in drama class. I was doing a presentation on them. The number 2, I thought you could buy stocks high and sell them low. I think I was doing this on purpose to actually understand the concept, to double check, and he's like, no, you buy stocks low and sell them high. The sound is in danger, man. But before the end of high school, I noticed that I had egg on my face. And I don't mean that literally. Factually. In art school, in school during art, I would paint a paper black, crease the middle, smash it into my face. Now this was done during there was a substitute teacher who had no clue what they were doing. And I thought it was necessary to try and make example of myself, that I was trying to restart any premonition of ill will during any of these games by making myself a black sheep. Unfortunately, people who did not finish high school did not see that I was making an attempt to clear the board simply because I had changed schools. So that effect did not take place. The people who didn't make it through high school were teased, and they didn't get to see me showing that teasing had a lower standard in a realistic point of view. So I was attempting a reanimate of the bad tastes of the games that kids played. That was not reanimated due to the changing in school. On to college, and then there would be a thing called color walk. The paint splash drive. I don't know, I didn't do it, but I saw at the school where I graduated high school from that they were doing this. They were involved in it also, where you would run and they would throw dry chalk at you and you would be running, and a tactic where I kind of thought of it first, clearing the slate. I guess they put everyone in the game, so now everyone's a black sheep with the colors that they throw on you. Addresses the elephant in the room. And unfortunately, in graduating high school, once again, the people who did not graduate high school with did not see this color run. It was not invented until after, of course, the graduation of high school. If it were earlier, could they have made it if they did a color run? Perhaps. And is color running still standing with the pandemic? No, because it's an airborne problem that the virus has, getting airborne. And if you're throwing chalk at people, it could catch the particles of the chalk. And the second reason why the color runs are not a good idea. Wearing masks and running, that's one thing. But if you're wearing masks and running and having chalk powder thrown at your face, that is a whole different ball game. For that very reason, probably not ever going to happen again, not if the lockdown persists as it is. A reanimation is a concept where, like in a wax museum, if you see a strobe light, it's in a wax museum, and on your peripheral vision, everything looks as though it could be an actual thing. Imagine having tunnel vision inside a wax museum, and then the strobe light hitting everything. Then it would all look real. And in an animation, it wouldn't be the reanimation.